Welcome, everyone. Hello. Great to see you. Welcome to our Energize Your Classroom webinar series. We're delighted that you're able to join us. Please write to us on the chat with a hello and where you're joining from. It's great to see you, everyone. Welcome. It's great to see so many people joining from different parts of the world. We're here with our brand new webinar series. So my name is Sylvia Karastaki. I'm the head of teacher support for Language Cert, and I'm here to welcome you to another academic year of professional development with Language Cert. And I want to wish you a fruitful start and a fruitful academic year, a creative academic year with lots of strength for all the things ahead. So we're excited here to host our new edition of Energize Your Classroom. And this time, the emphasis is on classrooms as spaces for conversations. Every year, we've got a new theme that energizes us. And this year, we're welcoming 3 speakers that will take us from September to December. And we wanted to bring a first perspective and ask the question, what if energizing your classroom is not about really doing more, but it's about communicating more effectively? And we wanted to explore kind of simple but yet powerful ideas, powerful modalities and approaches to communication. So today we're going to look at setting intentional routines. We're going to also, next webinar in October, we're going to look at embracing meaningful silence. And in December, we're going to think about student-made visuals. And these webinars are just not training sessions. We are inviting you to think about this big idea. Think about your classrooms as spaces for conversations. And we want our speakers also to help us imagine this space for conversation. And with this, I want to welcome our speaker for today, Teresa, who is, hello, Teresa. Hi, welcome.
Hello. Good morning, everyone.
Hi. We're delighted that you're opening this first iteration of our webinar series, and I know that you're very, you're a teacher and teacher trainer based in Spain, this I know, but you also got a great way of energizing audiences and classrooms, and I'm really looking forward to what you've got to share with us today. So I'll be here and I'll be back for the Q&A, but Teresa, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Fabulous. Thank you very much for that very warm welcome. Huge thank you to the Language Cert team for organising this series, and thank you to everyone who's come along to watch live. It's wonderful to see so many different countries represented in the chat there from around the world. I've seen lots of people in Spain. Buenos dias. Whether you're in the morning, whether it's nighttime where you are, as Sylvia said, this is going to be quite a high energy webinar because I've got a lot to get through. So hopefully you'll be feeling energized by the end. So the plan for this session, we're going to have a look at 4 different areas. We're going to think about developing dynamic routines with young learners. We're going to think very quickly as well about how we can build rapport with our adolescent learners. For those of you that are teaching adults, don't worry, there's something in there for you as well. We'll be thinking about ways that we can make learning a bigger part of their life in their day-to-day routine. And also, because teachers really are at the heart of the classroom, we'll also be thinking about how you can work on your own development as the year progresses. Okay, so this is a little quick agenda. First of all, we'll talk about routines. Why are they important? We've called this session Best Foot Forward to kind of start the year with thinking about these routines. Apologies to anyone who's not just starting the academic year, but routines are something you can build in at any moment. Then, like I say, we'll look at some ideas for working with different age groups, and finally think about your own reflection as well. As Sylvia said, this is the first in the Energize Your Classroom series. You can watch the whole series once they're uploaded onto YouTube, but there are also all the webinars from previous years as well. I did one a couple of years ago on building stories into the classroom. There's so many fantastic teachers, so do go along and check out any webinars that you've missed. So, a quick question for you for the chat. What does the word routine mean to you? I can see, oh, Michelle from Almeria. I'll be in Almeria this weekend. I might see you there. Order and safety, stability, schedule, what you do daily, safety, nice actions we do every day, structure, functional system, what we do at the start of class, habits, consistency, predictability. Fantastic. There are so many great ideas coming through. Reliable, casual, everyday activities. This is really great. The foundation of chaos, says Kate. Ooh, nice from Yanka as well. I know what to expect. Excellent. So, I mean, I think that routines are really useful. Okay. However, sometimes they do have a negative connotation. Sometimes people think, and yeah, it's just popped up there from Tural, sometimes mundane. So sometimes the word routine, it does have this negative idea of doing the same thing again and again and again. But today we're going to be looking at the positive side of routines and why they can be useful. So there's been all these lovely ideas like a safe place, comfort, security. And so I think that's really why routines are useful. Humans, we are creatures of habit. We like to do things the same way. We like to know what's happening. We like that sense of security that our routines give us. And when we do things every day, they do become second nature. If you think about your daily routine, you don't have to consciously think, I'm going to have a shower now, or I'm going to clean my teeth now, or I'm going to have breakfast. So many of those things that you just do by habit. And so that's why we can bring these routines into the classroom so that a lot of the learning just becomes second nature. As well, routines are really good. This idea of uncertainty, comfort, they're a way that we can make our students feel more secure in the classroom. They reduce anxiety, particularly for learners with specific learning differences. They thrive much more on routines. But also, having routines reduces the cognitive load. If I go into a classroom and I know what's going to happen, I've got an idea of the role of the teacher, the role of the student, I'm going into a safe environment. I'm not on edge. I'm not wondering what's going to happen, who's going to go where, etc. Okay, so as I say, we're going to look at the positive side of routines in today's session. And as I say, we're going to look through the three different age groups and then teachers as well. So working with young learners, I really believe that having a lot of routines with your primary and particularly with pre-primary lessons can really help you cut down on your planning. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of ideas for routines that you can use. And I would suggest that when you're working with younger learners, about 70–75% of your lesson can be routine. Okay, and then you feed in something new at some stage so that there's a constant sense of progression. But as we know, our learners need repetition, they need exposure, they need to see language again and again and again for it to stick. And so that's why routines can be so useful with our learners when they're just beginning. So I think as well, our routines need to start with young learners before they even come into the classroom. And I'm thinking here about how they come in. So, for example, do they just you open the door and they just charge in and run in and start picking at things and looking around? We know that children love to explore. Other teachers have a much more structured routine. So maybe the students line up outside the classroom, and then there's some sort of event as they enter the classroom. I saw a lovely idea from Fiona Hunter recently, where students have a question and they ask, so the first student has the question, they ask the next person, then go into the classroom. That second person asks the third question. Okay, so it's something that they're building in and they're using English before they even get inside the classroom. And I think that's really nice as well because it kind of flips the switch. It makes them think about the language that they're going to be using for the next hour. Lovely idea here from Anthony, having a password on the door. I've done that as well. So at the end of the previous lesson, maybe you say, okay, everyone, next lesson, the password is pencil case. Okay, and then they have to try and remember it. So we're building in those memory skills as well. As well, what happens once they come into the classroom? Again, do they go directly to their seats? Do they go to a central area, particularly with young learners? We might do circle time. So think about where they are, what's happening, and set up your routines early on to start the lesson. So these routines as well, in terms of very young learners, they're really useful for behavior management. Like I say, you might get students that just come in and start running around. So if they know what needs to happen when they come into the classroom, the young learners, they love to push their boundaries. But if you've got a system in place, everyone knows it and they'll be much more likely to stick to it and to monitor each other. You'll often get young learners saying, no, 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 we don't do this, we come here. Excellent. Okay, so thinking about reviewing language. So as I said before, sometimes routines, it can become repetitive and it can become a bit boring. But that's where, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, I have 5 envelopes. Okay, 5 envelopes is a routine that I've been doing with my very young learners and my early primary learners for a very long time. So at the beginning of the lesson, you have 5 envelopes on the board. And each envelope has something. Okay, so for example, it could be that the envelopes are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. Students come in, you maybe do your hello song, everybody's sitting at their tables or sitting in the center, however your routine starts. And then you call on a learner to choose one of the 5 envelopes. And inside each envelope is something that they're going to do. Okay? So for example, in my envelope number 1, what is it? It's a song. Okay? But it doesn't just end there. It's not just let's sing a song. We introduce an element of choice into the lesson as well. So then you nominate a learner and you say, which song shall we sing? Shall we sing One Nose, One Mouth? Or shall we sing Old MacDonald? Okay, giving learners a sense of choice and agency is really useful in the young learner classroom as well. So like I say, you could have envelopes numbered 1 to 5. You could have a vocabulary set. So for example, you could have different fruits. This is my poor drawing of an apple. You could have animals. You could have classroom instruments. These are scissors. Don't know if you can tell. You could have colors. Okay, exactly as Eva says, depending on the topic of the lesson. So you can use your envelopes as well to review recent vocabulary. And then, like I say, each envelope has something. So, ooh, what's this one? The weather. Okie dokie. So with the weather, I don't know about where you live, but I live in the south of Spain, and the weather doesn't tend to change that much. So I saw a lovely idea where you introduce students to different parts of the world. Okay, so you say, okay, so it's sunny in Spain. What about, let's think about Indonesia. And maybe your students have heard of Indonesia, maybe they have no idea where it is. So then you can get a world map, you can show them where it is. They can think, they can predict, speculate about the weather. You know, even with very young learners, I think it's hot, I think it's sunny. Perfect speculation language at a very at a very low level. And as well, then so many websites nowadays have live weather cams. So you can actually show them what the weather is like, what the time is in that place as well. Really nice idea to practice a wider range of weather vocabulary and also to get them thinking about what's around them. Okay. Ooh. Ooh, ooh. Okay. So this one for me is about reviewing the classroom rules because we can tell our students the rules. And I think this is true for young learners, but also for different age groups as well. We can tell our learners the rules. They generally know them, but it's always worth reviewing them every so often. Okay, so with very young learners, I use visuals, a tick and a cross. I maybe hold up a picture of someone shouting and they say, no, you know, and then you can teach them don't shout in the classroom and you can drill that language as well. Okay, what's in my scissors? Okay, so this would be reviewing body language. So obviously with your little pieces of paper, with your visuals, it can be anything that you're doing. If you're doing a particular vocabulary set, if you've been looking at different countries, whatever routines you want to work on with your learners, pop them into the envelopes. And one final one is the everybody point game. This is a really nice one as well for reviewing classroom language. Everybody point to the window, but as well things like point to something square, point to something plastic, etc. Fantastic. Okie dokie. So yeah, Bernard says getting the students to say the day, the date, the weather. These are all typical routines that we have in our classroom. And lovely idea from Eva as well with the ladder of speaking levels. That sounds like a fabulous idea. So those envelopes, they can easily take up a big chunk of your lesson. You choose the content, but it adds in a little bit of dynamism because the students get to choose which envelope they want to pick first. And then there's this idea of surprise. Number one isn't always going to be a song. Number one might be a song today, but tomorrow it might be reviewing body parts or something else. So there's that element of mixing things up with your routines. Okay, and finally with young learners, ending the lesson. So similarly to the beginning, I think you need some sort of routine to finish off the lesson. And this can sometimes start 10 minutes before the end. Okay, so it could be that, again, there's some sort of question and answer. I'm a huge fan of lollipop sticks. Lollipop sticks are great for writing sentences. Students can take a handful, they can go around and they can ask each other questions. So with your very young learners, it could be questions like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? What's your favorite sport? And then they just have to do a little bit of a question and answer. Maybe there's a song at the end of the lesson, a goodbye song as well. But then also thinking about how they leave. You know, you don't just want your students running out of the door. So some sort of exit ticket activity. Maybe they get a high five on the way out or something like that. So definitely routines for young learners. If you plan them well, it will really reduce your planning time. Okay, so before we move on to working with teens, just another reminder, again, so much great content. YouTube, it's a 24/7, 365 day a year piece of equipment that you can access. So definitely check out all the hints and tips. If you're preparing students for exams, there are also some really good resources on there to give you tips for preparing with Language Cert. Okay. Before we go on, nice. So end routines are difficult to work in because many times someone didn't finish their work or has a messy table. I think that's definitely true. And then I think, Joel, there's something around kind of timing of activities, giving students the opportunity to take things home if they can. And that's why I think ending routines need to start quite early, or start earlier the younger the learners, so that you've also got that time for tidying up as well. Okay, working with teenage learners. So I love working with teenagers, but they can sometimes be a tricky age group. And so I think setting the ground rules early on really makes for a smoother year. I had a colleague, Jill Hodgetts, she did say that you could kind of, if you had a bad class, you could turn it around. And I think that's definitely true. But I think if you start from with your rules from the beginning, teenagers, they like a sense of system as well. There was also, when I first started teaching, the advice was don't smile until Christmas with the teenagers. The idea that, you would go in September, the first 3 months you would be really hard and really mean, and then they would kind of appreciate you and respect you, and then after Christmas you could relax a little. I disagree with that because I think you need to be authentically you with your teenagers. I think that they appreciate much more somebody who is consistent as well, whether that's somebody who's quite strict and serious or somebody who's freer. So yeah, choose your authentic persona that you're going to be with your teenagers, and go with that from the year on. But definitely setting up the ground rules early can have a huge impact. And one of the ways that you can do that is with classroom contracts. Robert Martinez, he has a couple of really great videos on YouTube about setting up classroom contracts. But the idea, particularly important, is that you negotiate with the teenagers. So rather than you as a teacher imposing, this is what happens in the classroom, this is what you do, get the students to think about what they want the classroom to be. How do you want to feel in the classroom? What do you want to do in the classroom? Uh, how do you want me to be in the classroom? Or what are your expectations of me as a teacher as well? Exactly, Bernard says, get them to come up with the ground rules. So negotiating the classroom rules is really important with your teenagers. It gives them a sense of belonging in the classroom. As well, with teenagers, they're at an age where they feel like they should have more responsibility, but at the same time, they're still being told what to do a lot of the time. And so it's really important to involve them in the conversation about the rules. Exactly. Bernard says ownership, and that makes them feel important. And lovely from Julie as well, having teenage daughters, build rapport and set boundaries from the start. So building rapport, I think, is vital with your teenagers. And it doesn't just happen at the beginning of the school year. It's something that we do throughout the academic year, throughout the time that we're with them in the classroom. I think as well, one thing that's really important, which is sometimes overlooked, we talk a lot about building rapport with our students, but it's really important for teenagers to build rapport between themselves as well. Teenagers are at an age where maybe there's different groups, different cliques, people are deciding who they are and how they fit into the social community. So it's really important at the beginning of the year to do lots of activities where they work with different people, where they get to know different people, they talk to different people. And then it will make it much easier during the year if you want to mix them up during activities. Okay, so one activity that I love doing with teenagers, is a Venn diagram. Okay, so a Venn diagram, you have two circles and they overlap in the middle. And then your teens talk and they find things that they have in common and they go in the middle section, the overlapping section, and they have things which are different about them. Okay, so one teen will say, I've got two sisters, and their partner says, oh, I've got a brother. So two sisters, one brother goes in that non-overlapping. And then they say, oh, my favorite food is pizza. Me too, I love pizza. And so pizza goes in the middle. Okay, so there are so many. If you go and search for icebreakers with teens, you'll find hundreds of ideas. So yeah, think about what activities work best for your groups. But do keep doing lots of them at the beginning. You know, for the first month or so, the beginning of the lesson, the routine can be a different activity to build rapport, and make sure that you pair someone up with somebody they haven't worked with before so that they're getting that experience of working with other people. And finally, with our teams, setting objectives. Now, we often, as well with teenagers, they're often under pressure that they're thinking about the future. They're thinking perhaps already about their end of year exams, perhaps they're thinking about university choices, etc. So it's a really nice idea to set them short-term objectives. So early on, even in the first lesson, get them to discuss something that they would want to do before the next lesson. For example, do they want to watch a film in English? Do they want to play lyrics training? Lyrics training is a great website where they do a gap fill with their favorite songs. So definitely get them setting a short-term objective. And then in the following lesson, ask them how they're getting on with their objectives. Okay, and then as well, you can do kind of a fortnightly objective. So give them something that they can focus on, but something that's tangible. You know, they already have long-term objectives, but what we want them to think about is something short-term so that they can see the reward more instantly, or they can see the results more instantly. Our teens, a lot of the time, they like that instant gratification. Okay, so moving on to adults, as I said, it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of working with different age groups, but I wanted to try and give some ideas for teachers of different groups. And it looks like there's some wonderful chat going on as well. Lots of you are sharing your own ideas as well. Perfect. The English zone, I like it. I also had a teacher with teens. She said it was tricky at first to get them to buy in to the activity, but when they did, they really enjoyed it. She had a shoebox, and when the teens came in, they lined up. She opened the shoebox. They took their Spanish voice, put it in the box, picked out their English voice, and put it in their mouth. Obviously, she said, you know, at first the teens thought this was really stupid, but then they did get into it. They saw the funny side of this box with their voices in as well. So definitely look for ways if you're having problems with students speaking their L1 too much. It is a very useful tool in the classroom, but if it's causing problems, there are definitely things you can do. Right, moving on to adults. I get distracted by the chat. So with adults, our adults are really busy, okay? You know, they have different motivations for learning English as well. Some of them, it's because they want to, okay? Maybe they want to be part of an English community. Maybe they just want to understand films better when they're watching things on Netflix. For others, it's very much about work, getting a promotion, being almost forced to use the language. Okay, so it's really important that we can do what's best for our adult learners as much as possible. Young learners and teens as well, they're in a fairly rigid environmental educational setting. There's much more structure in terms of syllabus and things like that. Whereas perhaps with your adults, you've got a little bit more freedom and flexibility to work with different topics, different materials, etc. So always find out what works for them. And this in ELT, there's another 3 letters, there are lots of acronyms. And one of them that I like a lot with adults is WIN. So at the beginning of the year, when you meet your students, whether they're new students or returning students, you're going to do some sort of needs analysis. And this is where WIN is really useful. Want, interests, need. Okay. So obviously the want is what their goals are. Why do they want to learn English? Okay. We'll also get into what some other wants can be. Interest. So this is thinking about how you can personalize the lesson to them or bring in things that they're interested in to really help to motivate them in the lesson. And then need. So this could be in terms of their goals, why they need English, but also thinking about language gaps. Where are there areas that they need to work on? So that's kind of the basics for your needs analysis for your adult learners. And needs analysis can take the form of a conversation. It can be a questionnaire. Some people do a language test. It could be as well that the student records a little video or a little audio with a couple of guided questions from you. And the great benefit of having these little audio or video recordings is that that's their starting point. And then, a month, 2 months, 3 months later, you can play that audio to them again and go, look, you've improved in this area. Your pronunciation here is much clearer. You're talking much more freely about this topic. So it's a great way as well for adult learners in particular to see a sense of progress if they record themselves. Okay, so setting expectations. What our learners want isn't always necessarily what they're able to do. As I said at the beginning, our adult learners, often they're particularly busy. And they may start the year thinking, yes, I'm going to come to class twice a week. I'm going to do my homework every day. I'm going to listen to a podcast when I'm commuting, etc., etc., etc. So have an honest conversation with your adult learners. What can they reasonably achieve? How much time can they honestly dedicate to their English? There's nothing worse than setting themselves very high expectations and not achieving them. That will give them a sense of failure. Better for them and for you to lower their expectations and say, okay, why don't we start with this? And then if you see that they're doing that, brilliant. Now let's add an extra challenge. Let's do this. Okay. I think often our adult learners, when they are coming to English lessons because they're being required to, it adds that extra pressure. Okay. So you need to then, I think, take the responsibility and say, let's start here. Okay, they might be high achieving adults in their jobs. They might have very high positions and they might want to do it up here. But I think it will be better for them in the long run for you to start low and then add extra challenge. Exactly, and you can show progress through monthly reports, says Francesco. So these conversations, it's not a conversation that happens at the beginning of the year and then you just stick with that for the whole year. No, then after a month, you'll go, okay, how are things going? Are you coping with the amount of work? Do you need a little bit of extra challenge, etc.? And as well, there are great ways. So our adult learners, they have access to everything generally. Okay, with smartphones, with the internet, they can access a lot of different tools, which maybe our teenage learners can do as well, and our young learners with the help of their parents. But definitely with the adults, they have access to resources, but they can feel a little bit overwhelmed by everything that's available to them. Okay, so this is where it's a really nice idea to build in a routine to showcase a different digital tool that your students can use. And it's really important that this is built in as part of the lesson, rather than just saying as learners are walking out the door, oh, why don't you check out lyrics training? It's great if you like music. Here's the link. Okay, no, because some students will do that, great, but you're likely to have a higher chance of success if you showcase the resource in the lesson, talk learners through the steps that they need to take to access it, particularly if it's something that they might need to sign up to, and also show them how it works. Again, if you go to a website and you're not particularly tech savvy, it can be overwhelming to know what you need to click and where you need to go. And oh, if it's something like lyrics training, then there's different levels. What level am I? So build into your routines. Take 10 minutes every couple of weeks to showcase a digital tool to your learners. Walk them through it, show them what they can do. Try it out in the lesson as well. Okay? Fantastic. So there is talking about so many resources. We've got more resources for you from Language Cert. And so on Facebook, you can check out the Teacher Tips series. And don't forget as well to sign up to the newsletter so you can get more regular updates in your inbox as well. So many different resources. We're providing them to you, so you don't even need to know where to look. Yep, and as Alison says, a real issue with busy professionals. And sometimes learning English is a priority for them, but they're so busy with other things that it's difficult. Yep. Julie, I don't know whether that's a link for the teacher tip series. I'll show some QR codes and I'll show all the social media handles at the end so you can check things out. So, last little section, routines for teachers, because you really are, I'm going to say it, the most important person in the classroom. Okay, obviously it wouldn't be a classroom if you didn't have students, but you have so much power, you have so much responsibility. So you really are the heart of the classroom. And this is where I think that if you spend a little bit of extra time at the beginning of the year setting up some systems, you can save yourself time in the long run. Okay, and this is where I need to practice what I preach, because I've got lots of ideas about systems for my teens and for a couple of adult learners, and I need to just sit down and do them. And then I know that I will have this mental weight lifted. So it's on my calendar for the next couple of days. So one thing that you can do is block planning. Now, this is particularly useful particularly if you're working with young learners, teenagers, and you're following a course book. Okay, you've got a course book or you've got a syllabus and you need to get to a certain point by the end of the year. In September, if you're starting your school year in September, June or July, whenever you finish, that feels like a long way off. But when you actually look at how many lessons you have in that time, it might be less than you imagine. And ChatGPT or Perplexity, another AI tool, is great for this. So I asked Perplexity, I'm imagining I've got classes Monday and Wednesday. So I said, between the 1st of October and the 30th of June, how many Mondays and Wednesdays are there? ChatGPT, Perplexity gave me the answer immediately. There were 39 Mondays and 39 Wednesdays. But then I said, okay, so take off 2 weeks at Christmas, take off a week at Easter. It did that. And I also said, what are the Italian national holidays that fall on those days? My students are based in Italy. So that got me to 69 days. Then I thought, okay, so I need to take off some days for my exams at the end of the year, at the end of the term. And also I'll take off another couple of days so that we can do some fun stuff at the end of term. So that left me with 63 classroom days that I can use over the year. And then if I've got a book which has got 9 units, that means I've got 7 classes per unit. Okay, call it 6, and then you've got a lot of wiggle room. So, like I say, this is my little writing of it. Doing something like this with an AI tool, really easy to find out how many lessons you've got. And then you can think, okay, so I've got 7 classes to do unit 1. How am I going to break that up? And then plan loosely those 7 lessons. Okay, and so then when you come to do your daily planning, you already know how much of the unit you need to cover in that day. And then it's just a case of fiddling with the bits. Okay, so block planning, really useful. Like I say as well, setting up systems. If you're doing exam preparation classes, when are you going to do a writing practice? When are you going to do a listening practice? If you schedule those things in, it really helps. It takes off a lot of the cognitive load. Okay, building in reflection. So I'm a huge fan of reflection. We do it a lot on teacher training courses. And I think sometimes once we're in our routines, once we're in the classroom and teaching 24, 28, however many hours a week, we do a lot of reflection naturally, but maybe not consciously, maybe not mindfully. Okay, so I think it's really nice to build in time in your daily routine for reflection. And that can take different forms. So, for example, I've got a book and I filled the book with questions. So, some of my questions are how effective were my explanations today? Who got the most from my teaching today? What was missing today? Did I nominate fairly today? Okay, and so 10 minutes at the end of the day, I flick through, I choose a couple of questions and I reflect, okay? And then I can go back through, I can reread things and think, okay, so did I actually change anything? Thinking, not only reflecting, but also planning forward. How am I going to do things differently? Another really nice idea, if you don't have so much time, Simon Perlman, a colleague, he talked about giving your lessons a score. So every lesson that you teach that day, give yourself a score, whether it's out of 5, out of 10. Because I think sometimes when we have a bad lesson, that can feel like a bad day. Okay. Whereas if at the end of each lesson you've taken a minute to go, well, that was an 8, that was a 7, ooh, that was a 3. At least at the end of the day, when you're going, oh, that 3, oh, it was horrible, oh, so much went wrong, blah, 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 blah. You can also look and go, well, look, I had an 8, I had a 7, I had another 7 after that, and then I had a 6. So on average, it was actually a pretty good day. So yeah, simple, give yourself a numeric score. And then as well, if you write these scores down, you can also kind of see where those pressure points are, which are these classes that are getting low scores. Is it to do with the class, the students, the materials? Is it the time of day? Are you hungry when you get to that lesson? And so you've got low sugar and it just makes it feel like a bit worse. Have some nuts. Okay, so final point, making time for yourself. I think that this is so important. Um, we often have big ideas of, yep, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to go to the gym, etc., etc. It's really important that you actually schedule in that time because there will be pressure points during the year, whether it's around exams or report writing or when other things happen. And so if you can kind of schedule in time, find out what works for you, find out what time of day something works for you, and really make an effort to focus on that and to do that thing. For example, for me, it's going for a walk first thing in the morning. I'm quite lucky, I've got a lot of flexibility with my timetable, but I'm also very aware, so I try to schedule things to start after 10 o'clock. I can get up at 7, I can go for a nice long walk, come back, get showered, get dressed. And that, for my mental health, is really important. And I notice the days when I don't go for a walk, particularly if it's a couple of days in a row, I feel the difference. Okay, so do make time for yourself. Write it in your calendar. Go to the gym or go for a walk or spend time cooking. Exactly. Ava says, used to work on Sundays. You need a break as well. And it's really important that you do make time for yourself. So yeah, Julie, lots of metacognitive strategies, lots of thinking about learning, thinking about the process of learning, the process of reflecting as well. And lovely here, well-being is not a luxury, but a right. I completely agree. Okay, so we're almost at the end. A very quick poll. It's been quick, but we've had a few ideas for working with different age groups and with teachers as well. So in the poll, A, B, C, or D, sorry, in the chat, which did you find most useful? Ooh, teenagers, young learners. I saw a couple of teachers there. Nice. Nice to see that it's like we're covering everything. Fantastic. Win, that got a big thumbs up. Perfect. Awesome. Adults and teachers, yeah, I think, you all work with different age groups, so I wanted to try and include something for everyone. Fantastic. Great. Keep those coming through. So as I said, a couple of QR codes for you whilst you're kind of in the chat. Lots and lots of teaching resources on Language Cert's website. Fabulous resources if you're preparing for the exams. Brilliant. We've also got our webinars coming up. Sylvia will be back in a minute to give you more information about that as well. And a little quick recap. So, routines are great, but we need that flexibility. We need to keep them dynamic. We want to keep our learners on their toes as well, and not to feel like coming to English class is boring and it's same old every day. Okay, so look for ways to make your routines dynamic. Little extra planning at the start might be that you need to work at the weekend so that you can really kind of get all your systems in place, but it really will save you time in the long run, reduce a lot of that cognitive load of what am I doing here? Have I got time for this, etc. Revisit and review your objectives, your students' objectives, reflect on what's working, why it's working, and if anything needs changing. And perhaps most importantly, take care of yourself too. I said you're the heart of the classroom. If you're not there, they will find another teacher, unfortunately, but your students will miss you if you're not there. So make sure that you're making time for yourself and taking care of both your physical and mental well-being through the year. Okay, so I said I'd share some social media tags for you. There they are. So if you want to get all of these teacher tips on Facebook, follow us there. Obviously YouTube, lots of things. And don't forget as well, because this is being recorded, if you've missed anything, it will be on YouTube soon. I can see Sylvia's come back. Hello, Sylvia.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this, for reminding us actually how important these routines are, because we talk a lot about innovation and about bringing in new things and innovating and doing things differently. But also, I liked how we started the webinar and all our teachers talking about the sense of safety. That routines bring, this sense of recognition, this sense of a space that they feel comfortable and they know. So I wanted us to start with this sense of creating this safe space that routines and rhythms can bring. Thank you so much, Teresa, for and any questions that can you please put them in the Q&A. We had a point from one of our teachers, so if you have any questions, so here we've got some questions from our teachers. So we see here Ion asking a review questionnaire, be a routine. Is that something that we could be reviewing particular items?
Definitely. I mean, I think again it was Robert Martinez who said that one of his starting the lesson routines is just a simple list of maybe 5 to 10 questions of what they saw the previous lesson. And so students know the first thing they do when they come in, they do this little review, they compare their answers with the partner, and then feedback. Did everybody get everything the same? Are there any questions, anything that isn't clear? So yeah, definitely build in that language review for your teens and for your adults as well.
Mm. And I think it's also this idea of marking the progression, because yeah, we talk about the beginning of the year, but you also made very good points about how we could be marking the progression between different stages. So let's think a little bit about, do you have any points in the year that you feel, okay, now this is a moment to take stock? Can you talk to us a little bit about your rhythms and routines throughout the year?
Well, so when I've worked with course book materials, obviously they tend to have built-in reviews at the end of the unit. Sometimes it's at the end of every 2 units, and I think that's quite nice as well because so often in education, our students are kind of told, right, study this for this exam, and then you can forget about it. So actually delaying your reviews, your exams, your tests can have a really positive impact as well. In terms of routines for exams, the school I worked at a few years ago, we actually changed it. So, the typical thing is end of term exams reports, end of second term exams reports, end of the third term. So we changed it to just twice a year because we found that because our students were in this system of 3 terms, the parents were focused a lot on what was happening at school, obviously, but it meant that all the effort that we were putting into writing reports and doing exams with our students, it kind of became secondary because of the schoolwork. So we changed and we did exams in February and then at the end of the year. And that had a really positive impact. It took a lot of the pressure off the students. They had fewer exams. Off the teachers, they had less marking to do, less reports to write as well. So I would recommend, finding what works in terms of not just your school system, but the wider school system as well.
Yeah, because there is a rhythm to the calendar, and yeah, sometimes personalizing it, especially for groups or wherever you are, whether you're in typical education, perhaps if you're in non-typical contexts, it could be you have a lot more flexibility. And yes, we there is a question here about the routines working for from Vicky for one-to-one lessons. I think they definitely do because there was a lot of personalization there. I don't know if you want to comment a little bit on, how do you approach kind of one-to-one lessons?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because sometimes as well with one-to-ones, particularly with adults, you might have a plan as a teacher, but it's easy to deviate from it, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So that's where I think routines can be really useful because you sometimes get adult students who you've planned a lesson, they come in and they just want to talk about something completely different, which is great. But it's important for you to think, are they still getting that progression? Are they still seeing the things they need to see? Are they bringing in something that they want to talk about because it's within their comfort zone? Okay, so maybe, think about a routine that you can build in to give them some new language every lesson, but it's a really kind of structured, okay, let's look at this idiom this week. How are we going to use it? Try and use it this week in conversation or try and listen out for if you hear it in any TV series or something. So definitely, I think routines with one-to-ones can be very useful, particularly when you've got those students who maybe have objectives, but then just get overwhelmed with everything and want to do something different.
Thank you. And let's think a little bit about this idea of checking homework. There is a question from Marina, and she says a lot of time, especially for certain levels, there is that routine of checking homework. Is that a routine activity for you, or do you see that part of a lesson? What is your routine around checking homework?
Yeah, I mean, for me, checking homework, it is a part of the routine. Setting homework as well is a part of the routine. I think there are different ways that we can check homework. It
Mm,
doesn't always need to be, okay, give me your books and all the pressure is on me as a teacher to go through and mark them all. I think as well, it doesn't necessarily need to be, okay, everybody open your books. What did you get for number one? What did you get for number two? I think one thing that we can do that works really well with learners, particularly when we get to teenagers, perhaps not so much with primary, is to just display the answers and get them checking their work or swapping books with a partner, checking each other's. It makes that homework checking a much quicker activity because we're not going through it lockstep, what's number one, what's number two. And you can be kind of monitoring, going around, seeing if people are on the right track, seeing if there are any problems. And then, if there's a way for them to record their scores or whatever, and then you can use that data to see if you need to review something in detail.
mm. Thank you. We got some questions about adult learners, and I guess some of our teachers are very interested in that. Let me phrase them in a kind of compact way. People are asking about sort of how can routines help with disciplining adult learners, which, yeah, they've got their own agendas and also they're very busy, as you said. And also, how do you work with homework for adult learners who sometimes, Lorna says, they don't want to do any homework, they don't have the time for that. And can you tell us a little bit about these routines in relation to homework with adult learners?
I've just seen a really lovely comment here as well from Pauline. Some adults feel shortchanged if they don't get a lot of homework.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah, it's interesting with adults because when you're a teen, you go to school to learn, like you get your information from the teacher. But when you're an adult, there are so many other ways that you can learn and you have, so many other resources. So I think with adults, if I've got a group, I would do kind of obligatory minimum, if you can call it that. So to say, okay, this is what we really need, this is what you really need to do before next lesson, whether it's a review or if you're working with a flipped classroom as well. Flipped classrooms can be particularly useful for adults because then the pressure is on them to do the work, and adults are much more aware of feeling out of sync if they don't do that work. So it's a good way to kind of push them to do things. So then, yeah, an obligatory minimum. And that can be very minimum for those learners that who are going to struggle because they've got so many other things going on. And then for those students who want more, give them things to do, but try to make it things that don't necessarily require you to do a lot of follow-up work on it. So
Mm.
it could be, send messages to each other if you've got WhatsApp groups or things, rather than it being something that they have to produce and you need to take the responsibility of checking.
Okay, thank you so much. We have um, questions coming in about or comments about flipped classrooms, whether they work or not. So it's kind of very busy here in the chat. And there was a question about the timing. Like you said, I think someone from the chat says, is 10 minutes sufficient? I like how you said for young learners, 75% of the lesson is kind of built around routines. And can you tell us a little bit about what is the maybe a recipe for perhaps teenagers or adult lessons? How do you see the recipe there for these groups?
Well, so I think as well that can be really useful when you do your block planning, because block planning lets you see how much material you need to cover within a unit, within a year. And so then you can play around with your routines. So maybe the first lesson of a unit, you'll do a lot more work reviewing previous content and then feed in a little bit, okay? And then the second lesson, spend a little less time reviewing and a little extra time with new content, because as well, remember that we don't want to overwhelm students with all the new information in one go. There's a limited amount of how much new information students can handle. So I would say maybe with your teens and with your adults, the routine to new content ratio might adjust as you go through the unit.
Thank you so much. I really like this idea of just different moments in the unit and how the recipe changes in relation to new information. Thank you so much, Teresa. I think this is, I know this is all we have time for today. You will be getting a certificate of attendance for this webinar. It will be emailed to you. It will also be, you will be able to rewatch it on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. And the things that are coming up, I wanted to, just as we say our goodbyes and our thank yous, I wanted to give you a little bit more information about what is coming up with Language Cert. We're going to be releasing new teacher guides that we'll be preparing all the summer for B1 and B2 level for schools. So this is something that you're going to see very soon on our website. It's a resource for teachers and with ready-to-use guides for our certifications. And what's coming up? We're hoping that you're able to join us in our next webinar with Chantel Walls on the power of silence, thinking about a different modality of communication as we explore this theme of classrooms as spaces for communication. And a final piece of news that we are inviting 2 speakers in November to talk about how they see effective communication in the classroom. We're going to send you the information very, very soon in your inboxes. And this is an online event that we really feel very excited about as we are preparing what we think is going to be a dialogic event that is going to exhibit what we feel in Language Cert is about creating these spaces for conversation. I think we're really building a very warm teaching community here. I want to thank you all for your participation. And there's going to be a short survey at the end as you exit. Thank you so much for taking the time to fill that in. So here we are at the beginning of another year. Teresa, thank you so much for getting us energized with routines and rhythms for the new year.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It was lovely to see you all. Thanks for taking the time and for so many comments as well. It really was wonderful.
Great. Thank you, everyone. See you in October.